I thought I'd do a bit of an introduction to start off, just to explain so you guys don't see this ridiculously long video and question what the hell is happening. So this is Devil King Productions. My name is Iorveth, and this is the daily art streams that I do on Twitch. So the whole point of all of this is I've got a really big passion for supporting free education. It was really tough for me to get started doing art, and I wanted to help other people achieve that goal of learning digital art. It's a really terrible slope to climb on your own, and I want to help anyone else out that I can. We stream daily live on Twitch. Twitch link is down below if you guys want to check that out. We stream every day, American time zone and a European time zone. And this is one of those VODs cut up. I'm hoping to have 3 of these out a week. I hope that's not too ambitious. This one's rather old. I lost a bunch of VODs. So we will be like catching up on them. So you will be up to date pretty quickly. And we were testing out a lot in the beginning, so don't stress. But hopefully you really enjoy this video. And you guys love free education, and these will be coming up as often as they can. You guys have a wonderful day, and hope you enjoyed the stream. Good morning. Good morning, good morning. How are we all today? Happy Monday. Let's get this camera all fixed up. Ooh, let's get that audio off. Hope we're all ready for another exciting week at doing some cool art this week. We've got some really nice methods. This week's topic, we're going to be touching on the anatomy of life, and how we can, I think people too often touch on topics of anatomy only in the human form. Maybe sometimes in the animal form, but very rarely do they touch on anatomy of life. And that's just not some over-the-top artsy term. That is, we can use anatomy and the way that they break down anatomy to break down components of life. Like if we were to look at a mountain, there's like certain anatomy that breaks down certain types of mountains, right? Like the anatomy of a mountain is different from the anatomy of a river. And then we can go even further and say that just like people, we have different races, we have different genders, and they change the way our anatomy works and functions. And just like that, there's different elements of life, much like a mountain, that changes its anatomy depending on which type of mountain it is. So we're going to be working through those kind of topics today, on how we can build to create a better understanding of life and how we can tackle those things and then put those compositionally in scene to make a better like art for all of us. So I want to talk about when we look at anatomy of environments. I really like these 2 pieces because they both resemble similar elements displayed in a different way. We have both these pieces use a core component, which is a bridge, in both scene, right? So we have this really standard just bridge that connects 2 points together, but they use it in 2 very different ways. So just as like a basic, we have a very low shot down here that's shooting up, and we're looking through this negative space here to observe this bridge here. And then also here, we're coming along and seeing the negative space that exists here to observe that bridge. But we're looking at it from the top, right? But how these guys create these images with bridges is one of the big things you have to consider when you're first starting to create your image. We always talk about understanding which part in the world your design sits, where does your art sit, what environment does it come from. And as we can see, there's 2 very different like kind of formations. So this is a very organic structure we can see with these like smooth surfaces, but they're also random, right? We can trace them and see that there's kind of sporadic nature to all of it. It's all got different kinds of bumps, different kinds of gaps. There's almost no order to it comparative to a man-made structure, right? So we have this man-made somewhat structure here, or we can assume. And that's what drives their eye. In the second one, we have this very perfect man-made structure. Lots of nice lines that point in the same direction. So we have lots of different straight lines, right? But we want to go even further than just kind of direction and intention. I want to dive in and observe anatomy of an object and how, when we understand this anatomy, you can be super creative with your design, right? And by understanding the depth of the anatomy within your topics, you can create a much wider range of stuff, because you're not just stuck with the one thing you've known. You instead can build things fresh by developing the sense of anatomy in your head of structures of life. The really great ways that these two environments embody, as I mentioned before, two different rock styles. So we have this like man-made structure here. We have these like big panels, right? So they're, if we were to view them in a space from the top, you know what I mean? They're these structured like flat surfaces, right? So that's what this is like over here. We can see them like this, and they have these little monuments like this. Over here, we have these different rock shapes, right? But this rock is like smooth. So these rocks are not, you know, these like jagged shapes. It instead, so it's not like this. It's instead this smooth, watered down rock shapes. Right? We get a much smoother transition between everything. Even little holes that exist like here and here. These look, even if it's like this hole, right on the, let's get some new space. If we have this shape like this, and it has like a hole on the side. Oh, let's get that up. Oh, we're all over the place today. Mondays, am I right? Alright, so it's not this like sharp razor edge. It's not like a knife. Right? This is more smooth, right? There's this rolling transition over the edge. And we can understand that when we start developing an understanding of, say, smoothness in this scene, right, we can start developing shapes. So if we're going to make a corner of a cliff, right, we could do it like this. Right? And have these sharp, aggressive lines that drop. But that's in the anatomy of understanding that something that is aggressive and cut. So this looks like there's been a knife and it's just cut down straight down here. Right? Well, we could take another approach, right? So we'll draw the same kind of thing. Right? Same kind of drops. But what we do instead is that we roll these edges. Right? We want to roll them down. We want to smooth them out, right? And by smoothing this out, the comparison between A and B over here is that this feels like it's been slowly degraded over time. There's a sense of like degradation as the water's fallen down. But we get this observation, obviously, in the scene. It's very watery. We can see where it drops down like this, drip, 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 drip. And since it like smooths all the surfaces. So we like round these shapes. You can see there's a sense of roundness in the shapes here. When we come back to this image, excuse me, it's these, all these sharp shapes. Bar this here, right? And these like little curves for architectural reasons. Right? The shapes here are jagged. And we can see these like rectangular man-made structures in all of it, right? Even when it comes down, this curve is like too uniform. It's like precise. It's very sharp to human architecture. But when we jump back to this, once again, we can trace any shape of light that we see, and it's this smooth transition. So when they're creating shapes, right? say we're gonna make 10 rock examples, right? We'll split them down the middle here. We could have sharp rock A, right? So that's A over there. Call that A, right? And then A over here is understanding the smoothness in that shape. And we have these two different styles of rocks. Right, let's make like a long rock, right? So B, we'll make like this long rock. And then over here on B, we're understanding a smoother transition of stone. Right? So we look at this and we can observe that there's general shape differences, right? But as well, what we can do is we want to look at kind of how we can break down certain things in life into more shapes, right? So if we're building like a mountain, right? So we'll make the same kind of cliffside. I'll give you an example. We want to have something that goes like, cut it back a bit, like this. So people walk up this way, and this is kind of like the cliffside. And the way we can approach the anatomy differently is just by building up the shapes. Using the same kind of core shapes, we can create different senses of anatomy. For example, using human anatomy, if you were to draw someone that is extremely broad, you're going to draw this big triangle, right? You're going to draw this big triangle like this to draw their body, and then put them down. Right, we put their head up. Big, broad shoulders, right? If we were to do the opposite, right, and we were to just use a square and then a rectangle, right, head up, we get less broadness and blocky body, right? So that's how kind of anatomy, when we're studying core shapes, that's how they come into play when you're devising people. So we need to, when we're making shapes, you could break them up, right? So let's get a different color for now. All right. So we're going to make this shape here, right up here. I'm going to blob it out. Keep these round shapes always present. I might just add another blob there. Right, so I'll make the base shapes like this. Or if I was to do a jagged, right, make it more aggressive, I might break it down into a series of triangles. Right? Maybe some squares. But just harder, more aggressive shapes, you know? I actually like that. That's nice. Alright, so we look at that. Maybe we could break them up even more. Right? Now when we trace over them, let's lower the opacity here. When we trace over them, we get this far more aggressive, different shapes when making like a cliffside, right? We can just add some quick details in, just like this. And here we might keep more of a bubbly shape. We'll just check it this so you get what we're talking about. So that's like the top. And so we get these like two different shapes. But because we've broken down the kind of like anatomy of how these kind of shapes work within the body, we get a different style, but we also tend to approach different kinds of looks. So that's probably the best way to always think of it, that just as I said before, Much like how people have different genders, different races, you come from different parts of the world with different heritages, we mix and match, and there's all these different shapes and influences. So when you do things in real life, those things happen. The mountains in China are going to be different from the mountains in Iceland. So you have to think about the influences that you're going for and kind of where is it all sitting, and what kind of shapes and anatomy, how do you break them up? Anything that is too complex, don't worry about. Just go back, work on like what is coming through, what do I need to make? And a great place for us to start is trees. Trees are fantastic because they have so many different types. They grow in different ways for many different reasons. So when you're thinking about plants in general, so especially trees, right? Trees are almost like the best way to think of them. They're like the alpha of plants, right? These kind of fauna want to survive, right? They've had this long battle with life, and they're the biggest and they're the best at taking light. That's their food source. So much like how we have predators that hunt food, plants hunt sunlight. Typically, at least. So they hunt sunlight. So they're in this open competition with each other. So how this planet feeds, you got to think about, and trees are always trying to reach in a way that allows them to get the maximum amount of sunlight to grow and to feed themselves. And this will come back later, but always keep this little section in your head. So it's about talking about how they reach out, how they're getting sunlight. But we can look at how different shapes are being used by these trees, right? So first of all, let's just kind of get like a general understanding, right? Let's see how these kind of shapes work. So you can start off, for example, by just kind of drawing a trace if you're looking to get that understanding, right? We could do a trace, just like this. And maybe understanding negative space like in here. We're just looking to see little nuggets of negative space. Right? So we could do it like this. The other way we could do it, we could do a skeleton drawing. Right? This is just kind of trying to follow the general shapes. This is really rough, and that's how you should keep it. Right, just like this. We're just trying to get a lot of the core shapes out in our head. And you can see when I turn this off, we get a very good understanding of how these trees are... Oh, I just threw my pen. These trees are reaching out, how they're stretching out, right? Now, once we kind of have that understanding of, okay, so these plants are reaching, we're getting that kind of general shape in our head, we can start thinking about form. So much like in anatomy, we study how shapes move in the body, and a great way, so when you're doing an arm, right? So we could draw so we'll have like the arm come down, this is like the shoulder, and then this is like the forearm, right? And we have the hand here, right? But when you're looking for understanding the form on the arm, a great way to study anatomy in a person is to follow that shape. You can keep that line going. I'll do something like this when I'm figuring out. So if I'm trying to figure out a forearm, I'll go, okay, comes in and it tucks in. Maybe I'll make that a little bigger. And then I can follow that line. And it's because I'm trying to understand how parts of the body wrap and how they turn. So we can do the same with the trees, right? We can understand and maybe just try to like identify some of these core shapes. So I'll wrap like this. Right? Oh, okay, cool. So there's certain shapes are wrapping down. Right? So we got all these little shapes. And we can see as we're trying to understand certain parts of the form. Right? When we take the background off, we're getting like this sense right here of the shape. It's like this woody, it's curvy, it's bending. And we can try to do it on the other shape, right? We're trying to understand, say, the perspective of a tree. There's so much we can learn if we're trying to use the form method. And you can use it along with the skeleton method, like over here. So we go skeleton, and then we're just trying to wrap that form. So when we tuck back, we can see that the lines here, when we're looking from a lower perspective, have a wider reach. And then once we get up, they bend more. There's like a sharper curve, like here, up here. And that's because as we're zooming away, we're getting to see more and more of that shape of that tree. And also the tree is getting thinner as we travel up. So little things about anatomy that we're learning, that that we're breaking down. Like we can see that, you know, the tree doesn't just splinter off like in this aggressive 90 degrees. There's this like smooth, bumpy transition into branches, right? It's like it's part of the flow of the tree. Nothing's aggressive in this tree. It's nice and smooth. It's just trying to go along and do its thing. So when we look at these ones now, we can start to see that logic that we're building. Okay, well, if we're going for a tree like this, part of its anatomy is that it has a small base. Very small. So we spend very little time on this. And then it wants to deviate instantly. Let's turn this. Put a bit of a darkness filter so we can see. I'll just go down opacity. Cool. We can see that instantly it's trying to split. It's trying to just pop its branches out as quickly as it can. And they spread out. But we can also see once we start touching on form, we're just trying to get general rotations. When we take this off, this is like really sporadic. It like bends and turns in weird ways and it has these big lumps on the corners where it once wanted to go, but decided not to. And we can see that there's almost like a sense of unbalance. There's a big difference between here and here. These branches are like different in weight. So there must be this really solid foundation under here because it's just growing in whatever way it wants. When we look up at the tree at the top left, there's these nice lines that come down. And then it seems like the branches are growing out. Like fingers sticking through hair, you know what I mean? It's like it's coming through like that between the branches. It looks really nice. And they're wide reaching. And they even have this extra piece of anatomy that they have little roots that grow down like this from the stumps. Right? So it's still very oval shapes. Very nice round shapes. And we can see here that as it reaches nice and wide, it wants to also plant on the way. So we can see a lot of things about these trees. Now, just one last thing. We want to look at how artists use trees. And they've used them in a bunch of ways with a bunch of different angles, right? And as artists, we should be observing what other artists are doing because what makes their work great probably makes our work great. And the biggest thing I noticed that they do is when the tree is the main topic, it is massive. These three art pieces, which I've just searched online, all three have the tree as a major size. Even here, we as an observation do not believe that the human being standing next to this is this tall. We just don't. We don't think that because of the way the artist is framed. The camera angle probably would put us maybe here, right? Maybe even smaller than that. So we can go, okay, artists are really liking these like big trees. Okay, cool. What are they capturing about the anatomy of these trees? Part of it is trying to accentuate certain parts and aspects and what they're trying to tell about the tree, right? So each three of these has different kinds of looks and embodies different anatomy, right? So we'll have 1, 2, and 3. So number 1 is trying to touch on this very natural, very thick tree, right? Very, like you go to a park one of the big parks, and they have these. Nice big standard tree, very soft, very beautiful, nice autumn tree. When we go to 2, it's in this dark setting, it needs to be twisted. So the main branches are not very thick at all, comparative to the, wide sense that this is. But what it does is it embodies lots of little roots that contort and change and build the shape. Right? So think of it like piling spaghetti on top of the topic. On the object, sorry. And twisting out. And hence it's this like conglomeration of shapes of twisting spaghetti. And it builds the mass, right? So mass in this tree is built through the spaghetti. And then we come to this one, number 3. We can see he's going for total epic, right? So he's going for size. This tree is going up, but it's not going up in one solid mass. Each one comes up as like this new individual branch, but they all meet here. This bottom section. They all meet at the base, so they all twist into one. So these are all branches that push up. So we've got to think about those little decisions in our head. Now, to make trees, I like to start off by sketching, right? Sketching is a great way for us to really freehand dive in and just start painting around, and we can get some nice shapes, right? Beautiful. And I suggest being very experimental here, and this is how we do anatomy. So if I'm going to do a person, this is how I would do it, right? So I'm trying to think of a pose, right? I'm just going to, start anywhere and just start thinking about like certain shapes. Right? And that's it. That's the start. That could be the entire basis, of my sketch. And for example, we could build this up, try to add components, right? Maybe I'll see he's got this like sword and spear. I'm just trying to catch the motion of this work. Right? So we're just trying to get certain components. I'm just keeping the sketching really light. And what I'm starting to do is try to understand what kind of shape I'm going for. But I'm keeping it loose because what I want is for me to make sure that I'm not getting bogged in detail and that I'm trying to capture this movement. So here he's roaring up, getting ready to do this big barreling movement. And then, when we could tighten up detail later, I'll jump ahead a little bit. And, we start coming in and, we start adding armor in. But you can see how I'm making these shapes because, I'm able to be so fluid. And it doesn't have to anatomically be perfect, but we're just trying to get the flow of the movement. And a lot of anatomy painters, sketch artists predominantly, what they're always working on is this fluid motion of movement. So you should embody that in everything. So we're going to build a tree today. So we need to think about it that same way. So I'm just going to be, I've got that knowledge in my head. I'm just going to kind of try to cut along and use the space that I have. Not everything you make is going to be awesome, you know what I mean? It's very rarely everything you make is going to be awesome. But what you can do is just try your best to be, you know, as unrestricted as possible. So remember, this is just concept designing. I'm just trying to get as creative as I can in trying to think about certain elements here. All right. I'll make this tree a little bigger. And this is where we can maybe start getting in, sketching in some details, right? So just turn down the opacity here. We just want to get on top and see what we can start making and start seeing. Right? Just like this. We're just trying to look at the shapes that we have. So we're seeing a lot of nice round shapes on this tree. I really like that one. That one's cool. Let's jump up to this tall one. And you see, once again, I have another tree design. Right? And we're just trying to, this is a great way for you to understand the anatomy that structures a tree, and that's why it should be messy. Trying to be perfect too early, it's just going to mess you up. You don't need that. You don't need that in your life. You got more going on, you know, and it's about just trying to understand certain structures. If you can get the structure right, you are unstoppable. I believe that you can do it. You just got to learn to relax. Just like this. Seeing how we're getting all these different kind of tree shapes and beautiful, beautiful structures that we can work on. Right? Doesn't matter how small they are, they don't have to be perfect. Nothing here is going to be perfect, because we're going to touch on it all later. This is just concept staging. Just like this. Cool. You know what, I'll finish this last one. He's looking cool. He's looking a bit lonely on his own. You can be as quick and fast as, you know, as slow as you want with these. I would advise, you know, being fast. This isn't going to be the rendered sketch at all. This is just, you know, does this look alright? Alright, so we have all these trees. Does anyone have any preference on which one we'll work on? I'll number them. 1, 2, 3, 4. I really like 4. Does anyone have any preference on which one we take in for the next steps? Alright, we'll go with 4. Alright, so we want to kind of just break down 4 the most we can. Alright, so we'll shrink this puppy down. Let's have a think about how it looks from kind of different angles. Ooh, we got a 4 as well. Awesome, pick the right one. Right, I want to try to think about this shape in a few different ways. let's think of it from like a top view, right? You're all about those orthographic views. Is it orthographic where you break it into 3? Because we're going to be doing that. I remember it kind of goes something like this. All right. So probably from the front, we're going to have all these like weird spiral stuff, and then it's going to kind of tuck back into this big fatter shape. Stretches down. It's going to curve more like that. Yeah. From the top, we're probably looking at bam, 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 and then it rides out and then splits open. We have some earlier pieces. Cool. So we can kind of establish, so this is like top, front, and side view. So I'm just trying to think about the shape, trying to understand the anatomy. You're trying to, for example, you're trying to learn a face. Don't learn it from just the front. Turn it to the side and have a look. Right? So we're just trying to grasp the shape here. Let's say that it has 1, 2, 3 major roots. Maybe the last one kind of spearing over here. Right, and then it splinters off into all these branches. So now we have this knowledge in our head. We're going to take it to Blender, right? I'm going to show you can use Blender Grade, kind of general base. I'll show you how we can build some really, really awesome structures. All right, so we select our object. Press the tab button, takes us into object mode. If we right click and go down to merge vertices at center, we have one vertex here. All right, let's turn the camera and light off. So we want to change our perspective angle to just the x-axis, or just one axis. And what this is going to allow us to do is we can build out the skeleton. That's why I said it was important to learn the skeleton. And I'm going to tell you what, I'm just going to quickly save this image so that we can have it up in the corner so you guys can see what certain elements that I'm talking about. All right. Save on computer. Does anyone have any questions that they would like to ask? Because now is a great time. Oh, that is a gigantic image. Alrighty. Alright, so we'll just keep that little puppy up there. And that's going to allow us to just kind of keep visualizing certain elements. So, let's get to building. I'm just going to put my Photoshop so I can see the image. What we do is with this selector, we press E. See how this creates a second element for us? We make a line. Right, so when we move this in 3D space, it looks like this. So we're creating a second dot. Let's get back to that X. And all we're doing is we're trying to create that shape. Now the reason, one thing we don't want to do is just drag one whole part like that. We want to create a few little notches on the way. We'll give it a little drop and then tuck it back up. So that's like the base skeleton of our tree. Probably the only other thing is, and by the way, if you ever feel like you're not happy with either, any of the vertices, feel free to just grab and drag and move any part you want. So now we have this on this x-axis. Right, this is our nice little skeleton. We'll just keep it there for now, and we're going to add a few branches just for now. We can just select one and drag off. And just like this, kind of try to create some of those other branches that we have going on. Don't worry if none of it's quite lining up yet. We can fix any mistakes. Like I've noticed a few mistakes now, but that's fine. This process will be fine with mistakes. All right. So one issue we have here is now the branches are touching just a little too high. A little too low, sorry. So all we want to do is click, drag, and just bring this down. And maybe we could stretch this out a little more. Just like that. And just like this, we have way more stretch and things fit a little better. We take it back to the x-axis, we can touch it up, right? We can just move the whole thing up. If you're feeling like you want to add on to the end, you can. So I'm going to add on a little bit more. Just like that. All right, so we've got, the general layout of our tree finished. Right? Just like that. Now we want to start adding things in a different axis. All right, we want to start adding more. And we have, as we can see, the tree has these like different roots coming off. Let's start with those, right? We can move around and observe these kind of different roots we want to make. Come in and tweak them. You can move them, change them, mix them. And we're just reaching out. These are a little low, so I'm just going to pick them up. Maybe here. Just trying to make sure that we understand this whole, root process. And I'm going to add one more root coming off this root. And I'll add one more extension here. So we got that down. But now we have all these, it's looking all good. But now we have a very, very straight tree. So what I like to do, you want to make sure you grab everything, right? So we can't just move one little section in the middle here. Because if we do, everything else stays in place and this is a bit wonky. So what we do is we grab everything and we can move it across. And we just move it one by one part at a time. Right, just like that. You see how this is working and we're getting a bit of a twisted shape now? We just might move that whole orientation a bit over that way. We might move it all a bit back as well. Cool. And see we have that philosophy and now we've got this contorted shape. So with this, we want to now do the branches. Right? We might pull this branch boop, over this way. And just keep changing it up. So with this branch, you're going over here, kid. And just like that. We're just trying to make the frame more interesting, not so locked in. Changing elevations, trying to get different sizes and shapes. Ooh. And just like this, I'll drop it down. And then this guy can come out. And now we have this really nice wireframe of a tree. It's friggin' fantastic. So what we want to do now, press tab again, go into object mode. This little cog down here allows us to add modifiers to things. We want to add a modifier, the skin modifier. And we can see here that it adds a solidness to our frame. Now before we do anything else, we just want to do one more thing, add another modifier, which is a subdivision surface. And we just want to turn both these values down here to 3. What that's allowing us is it upgrades the quality of the polygons, right? So I'll just downgrade. So you can see no quality and it ups in surface value. So we're just upping the amount of polygons so we can edit it later. Now before we apply these, certain elements, we know that the tree gets thicker at the base and gets thinner at the top. So I like to just grab a whole bunch. Oh, sorry. Z, we want to go to wireframe mode. Yeah, sorry. We want to... Sorry, I'm losing my mind. Go press tab again, and we're getting into edit mode, right? Edit mode allows us to edit these vertices. We just want to select... I like to select a big chunk at once. Work big and then get smaller, right? So we'll go to there. We press Control A, and this allows us to drag and make these vertices thicker. The skin modifier thicker, and that's great. That looks awesome. If we take it back to normal solid mode, we can see it's all nice, big, and blobby. Awesome. So let's take it back to wireframe. And I like to, grab less and less and add a bit more density, a bit more thickness. And lastly, I press Control S to save it. Control A. Go like that. So we can see that when we go here, it's at least starting to get the general shape more in line with the tree. I want this whole middle part to be thickened, so I'm going to grab all of it, Control A, and we're just going to kind of go with that thickness a little bit. And we're getting nice little bumps because we're being inconsistent that are making this look more tree-like. I press Control S again. I'm just going to thicken these up. Now, if you're feeling like your branches are getting a little too thick on the ends, we can just grab all the corners, right? Press Control A and shrink them. Just like that. And there we go. Look at that. Doesn't that look awesome? So we have the basis for our tree here. Now, press Tab to go back in object mode. Now we're going to apply these modifiers. Now, number one thing, just get past, always apply the top modifier first and just keep going like that, going down. Because if you don't, you can mess up the process because you're applying a different modifier. With this, it's layered in the way that it's presented. So we apply. Look at that. Doesn't that look awesome? Now we can see when we take this to sculpting mode, we can now edit. Before we jump in, just want to take the mirror off. Trees are best being sporadic, so we want to take that mirror off. And I'd like to turn Dyn Topo on, make that detail constant, and we'll start off with 20. Now, we'll run in, we may run into detail issues if the quality isn't high enough for what you're looking for. You can always increase your value here, and we can add more detail. Oh no, my computer's being a little laggy. Alright, let's turn this value down. Alright. Sorry guys, just running into a few performance issues here. I know what I need to do to fix this. So my subdivision, I'm just turning down to a quality of 2. Back to sculpting. Dyn Topo on. Sorry guys, just running into some frame issues today. It was fine in the test before. That's alright, we'll turn that down for now. All we're looking to do here is get the general shape of our tree out first. We'll see if the Blender gods decide that we are worthy of using more polys. You don't need it. We can still, if you've got a weak computer like mine is being today, and we're just looking to make the shape sporadic just by painting on. I like using the clay strips brush. It creates a nice bit of randomness. And don't, you know, we can always go in and add more quality later. So just getting it rough is a great place for us to start. See, we're just making these nice big general shapes. Our symmetry got turned back on for some unknown reason. So now we got the shape. Before anything else, let's save. Cool. Cool. Dyn Typo has decided to be better, I hope. We'll just close Photoshop for now and see if that helps us. Sorry guys, awful technical issues. Cool. Let's close a few things in the back. All right, let's go. By playing around with the brush, we can get some big shapes out of it. And this is what I was talking about, learning the anatomy of that shape. So I know there's will be these big piles that build up. Looks like it's growing out and contorting in some strange ways. So I'm trying to do the same. I'm just trying to get in here. I'm just smoothing for now. I'm not trying to worry about keeping that detail. I'm just trying to get some shapes in. You can see how this is already starting to sculpt more like a tree. We can go over those nasty little polygons. Don't be afraid to go in and cut as well. Just like that. Just make some big cuts. Because what we can do is just smooth it out. You see how that's got a really nice base to it now. And I'm just working very generally, just trying to get some big shapes in. Sorry guys, I might just reopen this. This file is just losing its mind on me. Let's restart that. How many tries do we have? 11,000. Okay. There we go. That's working a lot better for me. Sorry about that, everyone. Alright, so we're just looking to get these nice general shapes in. There we go, we can work so much faster now. I'm just trying to see the things that I've laid down, so I'll like build up the bumps that I've made, kind of try to follow that trail. Remember, the tree's twisting in on itself to build this wood inside it. The bark's contorting. And we just want to build up just like this. Feel free to go a little crazy sometimes. Like I'm just going to add like a nugget here. Right? And when we smooth it out, looks very tree-like for it to have that nugget. Maybe a branch has fallen off very long ago, and it's just healed over time like a scar. Always never forget to sometimes cut. See, that cut looks really nice. We can add little details in, blend those in. Looks like little twisting sections. Looks good. Oof. Alright, let's get in here. Now remember, we're getting less and less space to work as we move in, right? We just want to get a few bases down. Maybe here we want to start thinking about as well what angle we want to use. So I might think, okay, I want to use this angle for the art piece. So you don't need to draw on every side. We just need to be thinking about how much detail should we put in. You know, where are we even going to bother looking? All right. For example, we could go in on all these branches, but I'm going to cover up a lot of these branches. So I'll just get all the major stuff out. So as we're here, right, we're in a nice little spot where it's got the general shape going. So we want to kind of shrink our brush here, right? And we just want to start maybe trying to find certain edges that we like, certain elements we want to join together. Still, you know, it's okay to blend little bits and pieces. But you don't want to cover everything up, you know? We just want to start making little bits of detail. Still use that cut tool. Don't be afraid to cut into the mesh. Right? Just like that. We're just trying to make little nuggets of detail, like how bark is, how it grows, how the tree twists in unique ways. Right. You're starting to see little bits of the things in the tree you like. I want to add more of this twisting stuff in, just like that. Now, a little trick here, as you saw I just used then. If I want to add, say, I want to add a twist here, right? But you want to keep some edges, but you're worried about blending. Blend one side. What happens is you get to keep the detail on the inside, but it looks like it's a natural occurrence. Sometimes you don't want to blend at all. Sometimes just like this, running your brush over very lightly over everything, putting no pen pressure in, makes this beautiful little organic twisting feeling with your sculpt. Yeah, this looks really good. can do it with cutting too. So just cutting in certain places. We can blend if we don't like it, or we want to start again. Just like this. And we'll see it close up. So I'm just going over and it's just making this layer of, you know, detail we normally wouldn't get to see. And we know it's relative too. The size difference of that detailing is the same all the way across because we're using that same size brush and it's just applying to that model. And remember, don't be afraid to blend in certain parts and go back over, because, you know, much like how bark works, sometimes it just smooths out. But we're following this curve shape, right? Oh, that was very blocky, wasn't it? I'm trying to curve as much as I can rather than make these sharp corners, because that's how the bark is working that we looked when we studied the anatomy of these trees. I might just add a little bit more, maybe add a little nugget in here. Cool. Oh, I can see little things I want to cover up. All right, awesome. This is our tree. That looks really, really nice. All right. Let's get some lighting on this homie. Okay, so first of all, 0 to look through the camera, home to make it full screen, and then we want to go to view, lock camera to view. So now what we're looking at is the camera. Oh, it's not liking me. Ah, it's because, of course. So we just want to downscale the tree. Maybe we won't lock camera to view just for a section. Just want to make this tree a little smaller, just because the camera has like a range on it. So if, as you saw, part of the tree was getting locked away in view, and that's occurring because the camera has like a depth range that you can extend. I just make the object small is the easiest way. And I'm just trying to look at a great place that I like looking at this tree from. I love that. That's awesome. All right. And you don't have to, you know, they're pretty similar. So it does change a bit of the perspective, as you can see. Certain elements look like they're shrinking and contorting, so you can think about how far you want to be. I might just go there. Awesome. So light. Remember, we got to turn on the render first. So we got to click that top right section, allow the render to come through so that the light is now active. And we can be thinking about where this light's coming from. I lost my camera view. Cool. I might try to even the light out here a little bit. Maybe 1,000 watts is a bit much. Oh, not 5,000. A little bit more tame. Now Shift D if we want to duplicate something. No, it doesn't want to do it. That's alright, you can just copy paste it. What I might try to do, what I like to do with the second light here, I'll just make that, I'll make it 200, is that it's nice to have a light that balances. And we get a little point, a little stronger. We can see how we're changing certain elements. So I'm happy with that. I want to go and paint this tree now. Dark and murky. It'll look really nice. Actually, to be honest, I'm going to be a bit picky here. In light 1, I'm going to upgrade to 800 watts. Well, not 8,000. And I'm going to make that light and keep that at 500. Way high up, and then I want you. I might even actually downgrade this guy. Being picky in art's the way to be, guys. Alright, so before we finish, just as a reminder, go down to film, make your background transparent, and then we just want to go to render and render the image. Alright, let's get our image in, our little tree. Desktop tree. Alright, I'm going to make the background dark, not quite black. One thing about making dark, things that are dark and twisted. I got wood? Yeah, I got wood onion. About dark, twisted images or some more, you know, unsettling images. There's a very rare expression of contrast. So they don't make these big explosive, like black and white. They try to keep things nice and toned and cool. Now, before I start painting, personally, I've grown recently to like, just kind of like making a basic background. And by basic, I mean like basic. Like, I'm just trying to kind of get certain elements that I like seeing, and I'm just trying to understand certain elements just a fraction more. I like that darkness in the back, and probably add some in the corner here. I want this underneath the whole thing. And by doing this, I'm just trying to establish what I'm looking at in frame of space. Right? Alright, so I'm happy with that. Now before we do anything else, actually no, I'll do that. We want to, actually no, we're going to set up the image. So, you know, this tree needs to reside into the ground. So I'm just going to start cutting in and drawing pieces of dirt where this image, you know, where this tree kind of comes from, and start drawing some elements in. I really loved that twisted tree we saw earlier, so I'm trying to draw a lot of, you know, inspiration from it. And we're kind of going back down. And this is where we can start, you know, getting a bit of a better idea where things sit. And for example, and a great way to think of that is I'm seeing, I want this tree probably over this way more. And so I'm just trying to get the composition of the image right. All right. I'm really happy with this now. All right, so let's get started on this tree. What I might do actually is keep this background all together. What you can do as well is just get your rubber. See, ooh, we got to turn it off from being a smart object because it got transferred in. And we're just cutting into the tree, just like this. All right, let's start getting some colors in this scene. So what I like to do is I might test like a filter pretty high up. I'm just looking to get a general feel. What looks good here, right? So you can try all the different colors of this filter. Oh, I like this yellow. Oh, but I like that green a bit more. Okay, so we want to duplicate it and then apply it to either layer. The reason we need to do this is because it just allows that, making sure that applies equally between both the image, the different layers, sorry. All right. So now we have like this nice base color. I'll just start getting into it, right? we might just start getting some color. And I want to get a brown in, but since we have this base layer on it, it's still coming out. So if we were to color this, it's still coming out a little green in some places, which is good. We want that base color to come out. And always, you know, start a bit dark. You don't have to. For example, let's just get in this, get the basic color going. Keep that green in. We can, it's better to start dark because it's harder to get your darks in later. That always complicates the process. We don't want to, you know, spend too much time cucking it up. And just like this, I'm trying to keep the colors cool. You know, if we jumped in and put a red in, it can look great like in some places in this corner, but we're not trying to be big and bold with it. We're working with a creepier, darker scene here. So we need to be a bit more cooler color focused. I always suggest to students that I teach that if you're going to use reds, maybe purple, maybe only a fraction. See, I'm only using fractions of red here, just to touch in certain corners. But then I come back, maybe get a bit more brown in here. And watch your contrast. You want to make sure you're not getting too contrasty. Getting too contrasty is gonna, not too much saturation in your color is going to, you know, you can turn your thing straight into this big cartoon. And that's fine if that's what you're going for, but if it's not what you're going for, it's very quick to strip your image of everything you like about it. See how I'm still, even though this is a tree, I'm still using the same methods we've applied in earlier weeks, especially with faces where I try to make a different color variation. Where I always start and use a different color variation for the base of the face, because I get a lot more complexity in that, right? Just like that. I'm just trying to find these colors, trying to find what looks good. I want it to be way more gray. I'm starting to like these twisted greens over the reds. I'm getting some blues for those highlights. Looks really nice. Just gotta get a bit more blue in. And what I'll do here is I'll just add a fraction more. And what I'll do is I'll step back, and now it's time we add some color to this grassy area. Right? And we don't need to use, I don't know why I went to go set up a multiply layer. We don't need to. Because, and here we're just trying to, we don't need to set up that multiply layer because there's no detail on this. But if you did put detail and you want to keep it, then, you know, fair call. And remember, just trying to embody some of the colors. We don't want to make it too identical to the rest of the image, to the tree, because the tree's got a lot going on that's really interesting, so we don't want to steal information from it, you know? We want to make sure that it's still got a lot of the eye-drawing attention. So if we, you know, if I was to put the exact same color here as that's here, we're going to lose a lot of focus from the viewer. So even though I might put it in, I'll darken it. Starting to see certain things that I'm liking here that are, you know, exciting. Sometimes I'll just keep that dark brush on because I start seeing things that I like, and part of me is like, keep at it, you're finding something, just keep that shape. So I'm trying to find certain shapes. I'm seeing that. Oh, that's a bit dark, isn't it? Okay. Just like this. Okay, cool. Beautiful. And just like this. Which we might want to touch on some leaves now. So I have a new leaf brush set. Ooh, very exciting. Vegetation set. I love getting new brush sets. And it's about finding which one works for you and how much. I like things that don't have definitive leaves, that are more or less the feeling of leaves. I know that sounds really convoluted, but like, see, for that, sometimes those edges are a bit, let's get it on red so you can see. These edges are a bit aggressive for me sometimes, but sometimes I actually kind of like them. And then we just want to start dark. Ooh. Maybe we might go that dark. Cool. I'll just go behind. Right. Now, one of the things I like to do is come back with the same brush as the rubber. And just like that, we're just cutting back. And I'll just get little snippets out. I'll just rub big chunks out. Make big, bold decisions. But then what I'll do is I'll come back in and I'll paint with that same brush. So just trying to get that detail. I don't want it to be too samey. All right, so here I might go back. Oh. And then you can see I can fill that in. All right, so now we have that. We can clipping mask again. Let's find a nice color. Where is this light going to come from? No, that light's coming from the top. So we just want to add some pretty general shapes. So we're having the basics of our tree here. We're understanding that lighting a little better. And you might feel when you start off pieces this way that you don't have enough contrast, and that's fine, because it's, as I said before, with starting with darks, it's easier to lighten your scene later. So let's go up. I like that as just a basic. I'm just getting the idea, and you just always want this idea in your head to flow. I think I might go a bit more blue. There we go, just like that. Oh, isn't that? I actually kind of like that. It's kind of beautiful. I'll add a bit of color in here and blend this in. Right, just like this. And what we might be able to do, just to jazz up the scene, since we get an idea of kind of what our light color is, we can add little snippets of it like that. Just run it along the scene. Just run it along. And because we can run it along, we get a better idea of color and lighting. And just go back and reinstate some colors. Maybe add a bit of fade lighting between here. And maybe just go in an adjustment, make some contrast. Beautiful, that looks really good. Beautiful. Ah, what have I done? We'll get some fauna brushes in. Cool, that looks really good. Just add a softness on it. What you can do is you can use fauna brushes to kind of lay out certain sections. It doesn't matter if it's a little messy, because we kind of sometimes want that. This one's not quite doing. This one looks a little better. Yeah. You can get a nice mix of colors sometimes. Oh, that looks so good. Bit of brown in here. Get some more blue. And then we know down here that the light's coming from up top. So we've got to darken this whole mess down here. And we're just concepting right now. So it's okay that we can see. Ugh, oh, that was horrible. Darkness down. Just trying to get an idea. And we get a nice sense of roughness that we can tighten up on later. Now remember, as we get closer to the shade area under here, there's less light. So we're just trying to do that. We're seeing we're starting to establish like a really nice scene. Something that I always like to do is sometimes come here and just do a whole contrast of this whole image. All the way from the top. Seeing if there's something that feels a bit more natural. There we go. So that's awesome. So we want to make sure we put one of these on every layer. Now the scene is starting to feel really nice. Ooh. Now if you're feeling like these things are a bit too jagged, we can always go in and make it the brush smaller to add less, to add more detail. And if we want, we can start painting on top of this tree, painting some of these things up onto the tree. Remember, little dark elements need to come up too, just as much as everything else.